Good afternoon. Thanks for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Verónica from Triciclos. And as it was mentioned, I wanted to talk about sustainability in the farming world. And why? Why I wanted to talk about this today? We have a situation that is very complex, and I would like to start by showing one of the problems, talking about the amount of population we have in the world. This figure that is about 7,650, nearly 56 million people. It's kind of old figure. We're talking about 7,800 million people. And this is the amount of people living in this planet, our beautiful planet. Now what happens? That's not a problem by itself, but each of us today demands not only food, which for this area is relevant, and also there is a need of a growing production, but also we have a way to consume that is very specific and probably is one of the most important sources that we have today from the perspective of environment. Now what happens? We are anchored to a model of use of resources that is not necessarily compatible with this growth. We are inserted. And why? Because it is a model that I will describe it as an linear economy, where what we do is to extract natural resources we produce, consume, and dispose of. It doesn't seem to be a problem, but we're extracting permanently resources that not necessarily are renewable. We consume it and then we dispose of it, but it's disposed of in a way that in most cases this is not recovered by nature, such a way to become a resource once again to be used. That generates a huge problem in the exhaustion of natural resources, but also on the effects that these parts of disposal we're wasting, we're burying and burning a lot of resources that could be treated or used otherwise. And this not only generates a problem of scarcity of natural resources, but also a problem of pollution, because within these processes there isn't an environmental watch providing an orientation to say, okay, this, what's being generated creates a negative impact, so we need to stop it right now. Now what happens today, for instance? Here we can see some charts where we'll link the emissions of greenhouse gas from 1900s, and we can see how the generation has been increasing steadily and relevant, and this also causes an increase of global temperatures in the planet. So we are facing now a situation that is quite complex in terms of increase of temperature, and that causes an impact not only on to be able to keep doing things the same way, but also our existence as human beings. And that obviously it's a big challenge. Today, a couple of months, I was looking at the last report of the World Economic Forum launches this survey on perception of risks, and we can see that from 2012 to 2021, what are the different world risks that today are threatening our economy. And in this case specifically, oriented by the likelihood of occurrence. And we can see the green ones that had to do with the environment are little by little occupying being more relevant in these areas because of the likelihood of occurrence. And if we can see the impact here, then they are still one of the most relevant issues when we check the lists with the highest impact to the lowest impact. If we failed on the climate actions and we lose biodiversity and we are faced on this natural resources crisis, we're going to have a relevant impact, not only, I insist, on our economy and the way how we do things, but also in ourselves. And this could generate many other social problems that are not minor problems, and these is important to take into account. Now, when we want to understand a little bit more about the greenhouse gas sources, we can see that maybe intuitively we can say it's about energy or power, and that generates about 25%. It's a 25% of the sources of greenhouse gases. But next we have food, agriculture, and land use. So obviously here we have a big opportunity to contribute to reduce these greenhouse gases. So there is a lot of analysis in farming. This is an analysis made by Climate Action Group that is linked to the COP26, where we take the farming area and it's analyzed from the different perspectives of sustainability. We're talking about the social area with different problems, all the economic risks, and also environmental risks. And here we can see the same thing that we said. The contamination produced by fertilizers, pests control, etc. Then we have the emissions of methane and how we can try to choose other source of energy to try to avoid the misuse of energy. We have a loss of biodiversity and also erosion of soil. And here there is a big opportunity, I insist. I want to let you know from this from a positive perspective. In all these aspects that we can see as a risk, there is a big opportunity to improve the way how we work on our lands and how to improve the way how we work the land, not only containing the negative impacts generated by farming, but also we have the potential to repair and to positively contribute for the control of emissions and reduction of temperature. And there is something that is quite important when we talk here about agriculture. We not only have to look at the impact that we have on the processes, the processes by themselves. And here we're talking about the chain of value. And these value chains, we have to think what are the impacts generating along them. Today, Chile is an exporting country, and it's relevant how we export these products generated in our land. So there is a big opportunity to improve in the production stages, but also there is a need to improve the environmental performance in other areas, how we transport, how we export our food, how we pack the products. And that is quite relevant because in that packing there is a component of generation of garbage. If we think that this package and this linear logics were not necessarily was thinking about what will happen with that package once the final consumer opens the pack and uses its content, and then it goes to waste. So where should we start? What's the objective? We need actually to reduce that increase of temperature that we have, risking our humanity, and all what surrounds us. Well, how can we start with? First, we have to reduce that amount of emissions generated today. There are some studies, the IPCC, that we need to reach the maximum increase of 1.5 degrees of temperature. That implies a considerable reduction in the level of greenhouse gases emissions that we have today. So here in this chart, it's like the business as usual. This would lead us to the orange line, and we need to go down to the green line. So that is a big challenge, but that's the idea. Now I think it's quite relevant to face this challenge with a change in our minds. And that in Triciclos, and along with William McDonald in the United States, we're trying to position and help our customers say it's not enough that we can do less damage. Today, we have to think, talking about our consumer, anyone, they will say, what I need is to do something better, to be a contribution. And in the farming world, there is a lot of potential to do this. It's not enough that we can say, okay, I'm going to produce, I'm going to have a harvest, generating less negative impact, but I'm going to do it in such a way that I'm going to contribute that for that land to be better, so that that economy is going to be better than before, and I'm going to contribute for not only to reduce the amount of emissions, my emissions, but also to capture carbon in such a way to positively contribute to this challenge we are in. Now, where can we start when we think about this challenge? Okay, let's see emissions first. Today we need to take them to a reduction that is considerable. Many companies and production processes have to have neutral emissions. When we can see the emissions, it's around 55% is because of the use of energy, what sources of energy we use. So if we solve the source, then we can solve almost half of the problem. The other part is emissions that are more difficult to reduce, and this comes from the management of soils, buildings, electronics, this computer I'm using, and how we can reduce emissions in these areas. In order to do so, first we have to change this linear economic paradigm into a circular economy, and how we have to think now in the way to produce and consume in order to be aligned with the challenges that we are going to face the world. And here we can see a division between technical cycles, such as production of or manufacturing of a computer, and we have to design it in such a way that it lasts long, that it may be repairable, that sometimes today is not necessarily a must. And if we need a spare part, we can change only that spare part and not to waste the whole computer. If there is no way to solve it, this computer could be disassembled, and the pieces should be used in other components. Or if there is no alternative, actually all the components of this computer could be recycled. And on the other hand, we have other products. These are the biological products, all those that we consume and that have to do with the expo of today. And in that environment, we need to generate or to create a way to producing and harvesting, to regenerate the soil, to use the components and to recirculate good components of the soils, not to use something that damaged the land, and to be responsible of all the externalities such as gases, or to put them back again into nature in such a way that it's not damaged. Today, thinking about in the area of food and also related to residues, we can prioritize to say first we have to reduce at the origin all the prevention and the losses and waste of food. Now, what can we do with fertilizers or compost, or at the end any other alternative that is waste instead of regeneration, and talking about burning sanitary landfills. That is going to be the last option for these products. And here we have many examples here. I have a few of them here in Chile, that this is a vision on how we can understand this problem in terms of opportunities. Here I can show you an example of Rosario. She's been working for more than 35 years, working to transform, to create biofertilizers, and with this to help to nourish the soils. So this is not necessarily something that is a big innovation, but it's necessary to be implemented. It's important. There are many challenges about this, and obviously in order to do so we need to use our innovation to make this an alternative that is feasible economically to provide value along the chain. And this is a good example. I love it. This is Food for the Future. This is a company that received organic food in order to use them for insects larvae, and these larvae, when they have an optimum size, they become flour to be used in the change of other production cycles. So this is the example on how we can take a problem and to turn it into an opportunity, and in this way to add value but also solve a big environmental problem. We have other examples of treatment of waste, how we can decompose or clean different components within a subproduct, a byproduct, in order to reuse most of this something that could be considered a waste to be reused in the production chain, and in this way not only not to pollute but also to have a better management of our own resources in order to avoid more water and other kinds of elements that are necessary to generate new production processes. So with this I finish. I wanted to show you a vision that sustainability brings a world of opportunities. In Triciclos we're available to help you to find them. Today we need to build a more resilient world. We need to understand sustainability as something that has to be anchored to our business model in order to effectively to achieve that as in our business model to be perpetual in time. Thank you very much.